Tim Wendel is the author of the most recently, The Summer of '68, the season when baseball in America changed forever. Tim, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Barbara. Great to be with you.
You know, earlier in the segment, we were talking with author Jason Howard, and he's getting ready to write a book about 1967-68 when Robert F. Kennedy visited Eastern Kentucky. And you write about the summer of '68 as it affected baseball and how all of that dynamic affected the world, affected history. So why did you come to, you write about sports a lot, but why did you choose this?
I think '68, Barbara, reached out to me. I'm a notorious channel surfer at home. It drives my family crazy. And one night I was channel surfing between, I live outside of Washington, between all the various talk shows and that type of thing. And it occurs to me, we don't talk to each other anymore. We don't have a dialogue. And the great thing about history is you can look back at previous times where things were worse, and somehow we got through it. We got through '68, and that was much, much worse, in part because of the assassinations of Dr. King and Robert Kennedy.
Well, and not just, and you could look at any period of history and see where there were some significant things that happened that affected how we live. But in particular, '68 had a lot going on.
Yeah, it certainly did. I think my friend Hampton Sides, who's done some marvelous books, I think summed it up the best. He feels it's as close as we've come to a second civil war in this country. And, it wasn't just politics or culture. Everything seemed to be getting torn apart at the seams. Musically, this is where the Beatles start to break up. We're in this kind of weird eye of the hurricane between Summer of Love and Woodstock. And the more I got into the research of it, Barbara, I went, something helped hold us together. And I think it was really sports, and baseball specifically.
Now, a lot of people are going, yeah, and others are going, really? So how do you pull those threads together to have it to have cohesion, to where you can get everybody going, yeah, well, maybe he's right?
I think it's really looking at the human reactions that a lot of individuals had to the events that were going on around them. I think in some ways what's changed a little bit, we like to divide things up. Politics is over here, sports is over here. In '68, it was just a swirl, it was a churn. And the more I got talking with a lot of the athletes from that era, it was amazing how they were impacted just like any of us. And they had very human reactions. Bob Gibson, for example, the great pitcher for St. Louis, does not get off to a very good start in '68. He does not pitch his first shutout of the season until after Bobby Kennedy is assassinated at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. And he has this great quote, something effective, when they killed Dr. King, I was distraught, I was sad. When they killed Bobby Kennedy, I became infuriated. And somehow he channeled this passion, this anger, into one of the greatest seasons of all time, earned run average of 1.12, which baseball fans will know we'll never see again.
We'll never see again. So how does one even broach, okay, so you're channel surfing, you decide people need to talk more. That's a big stretch getting from point A to point B. How do you even begin something like this?
I think anytime, and other authors may tell you this too, Barbara, but I'm always looking for omens when I'm kind of starting a new book. I feel like I'm on thin ice. Is this going to work? How many cracks am I hearing, etc.? And the first couple interviews for summer of '68 just nailed it. I knew I was on to something. One of the first guys I talked to was a guy who was a rookie pitcher for the Detroit Tigers that year, came up north with the team and made the team, and the team is dropped off at Tiger Stadium. Everybody goes their different directions. He and another rookie are left on the streets of Detroit when there's a curfew going on, and going, wow, what happened? And he was so eloquent about just being kind of dropped off and not knowing what was going on. Time and time again, these athletes were kind of impacted by what was going on around them.
So you just kind of pull those stories together.
The interviews are great. And it's funny, I think a lot of ways, if any key, I think, to interviewing, and you would well know this, but is you kind of ask the different question. And it gets somebody thinking. And so suddenly you start bringing in culture and sports in the '68. How did you feel? What did impact it have on the team, etc. How did you keep going? And anybody who played for Detroit that year, Detroit was just under the microscope because they had rioted the year before. They had been told by city fathers, police officials, as the '68 season was starting, it'd be great if you guys won. It may keep the city from going up in flames again.
You know, and the way you write is much the same way you talk. You have a very, it draws you in, and that's a choice you make as a writer, but it also seems to appeal to your readers too. It's a conversational sort of way to, as you mentioned, when you're doing these interviews, to bring people in. So that's a conscious thought, or is it just the nature
I think it's
of the
somewhat
beast
conscious.
you are?
I'm not afraid to play the fool. In a sense, I'm not afraid to say, really? You know, and kind of, I don't know, not play dumb, but in a sense, try to get to a more basic level of how people were really articulating things or what they were feeling at certain times. Because I think that's the key. That's what draws us together often as a people. I mean, you know, we may have different backgrounds, we may have different jobs, whatever, but when you get to common emotions, that's where things start to resonate. And somebody can read, you know, Summer of '68 and go, well, I don't know Bob Gibson from Denny McLean, but look, you know, they were uptight, or they were fearful, or they were apprehensive, or they were angry. I know those emotions. That tends to be the key with me.
That very human connection.
Gotta be. It's gotta be.
So you don't have to be a baseball fan to read this book, but I mean, it is quite enjoyable. So what's ahead for you, Tim?
I'm working, actually I've got a novella coming out in just a couple weeks set in Cuba. That's another.
I saw that.
And that's one of my big passions. I've made 3 trips to Cuba. I love Cuba. It's kind of the land time forgot, and I find it amazing. It's only like 90 miles off our coast. And I'm working on another kind of baseball but related book on the '91 series that'll be out in a couple years.
Do Cubans like baseball?
They love baseball.
They love baseball.
And in fact, I thought I knew everything about baseball to my first trip to Cuba in '92. I had never seen more passionate fans. Imagine a crowd where they're drinking rum, they have a rumba band, people are dancing. It's like a phenomenon. And I was like, I thought I knew everything about the game, and then I'm going, oh, but I had to come to Cuba to find out the rest.
I love it. We'll look forward to that novella.
Thank you very much.
And future books. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Barbara.
Author Tim Wendel.